In section 4.2, we talk about asset management. Every organization have assets. It can be human assets, it can be digital assets like software. Every organization has assets and they need to be protected. Now, how is it acquired? How is it managed? And how is it disposed of? That's what we talk about in this section. So first, acquisition. You have to ensure that the hardware and software are sourced from reputable vendors. You don't want to get your hardware or software from any kind of sources. Ensure that your assets are secure and from reputable vendors. This is to avoid supply chain risks. You don't want to acquire assets from anywhere and then you realize that there was a problem with your assets. So you conduct assessments, you conduct vendor assessments, you conduct regular security reviews, you specify certifications and compliance requirements before acquiring your assets. If one of your vendors doesn't follow certain security requirements or are not compliant to certain requirements, then you don't acquire your assets from them, for example. So first you acquire the assets from somewhere. Then you assign the assets. Ownership helps ensure accountability for assets. If something happens, someone has to be accountable. So you have to give ownership. Owners are responsible for implementing security measures. So within the organization, you usually have a VP or someone responsible for owning the assets. It can be the digital or the physical assets. And it's also important to classify the assets. This helps determine the level of security controls needed. If an asset is sensitive or critical, it requires more protection than public assets, for example. So classifying the assets help improve security and assign security controls. Classify assets based on their sensitivity, based on their criticality, based on their value. There are multiple factors that help you classify the assets. Then it's important to monitor. Monitor the assets, maintain an up-to-date inventory, you track the assets, ensure that every one of them is accounted for. Because if one of them is unaccounted for, imagine you have a computer that you don't account for and it connects to the network, it can perform damage to the network and it will never be known that it comes from that computer. So this is important to prevent shadow IT. It facilitates the identification of shadow IT, so unauthorized devices connected to the network without prior approval from HR or from IT teams. And you want to ensure that all assets are tracked, that you know exactly where is every asset, how it's used when it connects to the network, when it disconnects. This helps to identify assets that may be vulnerable, that may be outdated, that may be security risks. Finally, you want to dispose of the assets. So disposing of assets, you have sanitization that ensures that data is erased from devices and it prevents unauthorized access to sensitive data. After you have used the data, you sanitize the data or erase the data. You can destroy the data, physical destruction of storage media to ensure that data cannot be recovered. You also need to provide some formal assurance or to certify that data sanitization and destruction procedures have been properly carried out. So you obtain certification from reputable providers to show that the destruction has been properly carried out and that there is no risk for someone to gain access to the destroyed data. And retention is also important. Retention ensures that data is retained only as long as necessary. It can be required by a court or by a governing body to tell you to keep data, maintain data for a period of X number of years. It can be for investigations, it can be for compliance. It depends on multiple reasons. And as a summary, here are some ways in which data can be disposed of. So you have first, data shredding. Shredding data is passing paper through a shredder, an equipment where you pass paper and it's shredded as you see on the picture. And this can be recoverable by experts. If they can align the shredded pieces of paper, it can be recoverable. So this is not really safe. Burning is another way of destroying data. You place the data in the incinerator, physical data, obviously, but this can create a lot of pollution. There's pulping. Pulping reduces the shredded paper to mush. We uses bleach and other chemicals to reduce paper to mush. You have degaussing. Degaussing makes data on the tape unreadable. So you have data that you put on the tape. And please don't go and put your phones in the microwave oven, for example, because that will create degaussing. And you have pulverizing. Pulverizing is physically destroying data or physical media with some huge machines that causes the destruction of the media.
All right, guys, was that interesting? Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Trust me, you will not regret it. Also follow us on our various social media platforms, including Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, and more, to be the first to know about the awesome content that we're prepping for you guys. Thank you for your attention. Hope to see you on the other side.